Hey everybody, Coach here. Hey, thanks for joining me this week. I appreciate it. This is, lovingly referred to as Designer in the Desert episode. If you look behind me, there's nothing but sagebrush for miles. And the things I do for YouTube and to bring you quality content, yeah, it's about 45 degrees with a 15-mile-an-hour wind out here. Maestro and I are freezing our parts off. Hey, I am glad you're here. I'm bringing you some insight from a landscape designer's point of view. And the reason I'm doing that is so that you can look at your project just a little bit differently and maybe with a little insight, look at it from the objective point of view of a professional landscape designer. Are you with me? I'm glad you're here. Let's get this thing going. Hey, I'm Matt. You can call me Coach. Every Friday I bring with me landscape DIY education, concepts and theories, ideas and solutions so you guys can go out and tackle a landscape project yourself, get professional results, save a whole lot of money in the process, and in this day and age be a lot more self-reliant. Man, after a 20-plus year career in the green industry, I'm bringing with me a lot of knowledge and experience that I want to share with you guys, the new, modern, educated, self-reliant homeowner of today. Hey, I'd really like you to stay with me to the end because I have a very important question for you all. Something to help the channel, help you guys out, and help me go in a particular direction. I hope you stay with me. Hey, you know, my landscape design career, it started many years ago, many decades ago at the ripe old age of 19. You know, part of my vocational training at the time was to start to understand the theories and concepts that went behind landscape designing. And I took to it like a fish does to water. I really did. Not only there at the vocation, at the nursery that I've spoken so many times about, but also went on into college and through ornamental horticulture and college level landscape designing, you know, came out with quite a bit of knowledge under my belt. Then I went on to get state certified in the state of California, and with that certification piece of paper, I can't even buy a Starbucks coffee with it. But it does give me a lot of vocational knowledge that I wanted to bring to you. And I want to bring it to you in a way so that you understand exactly what a professional designer looks at when they come up to your home. And maybe you guys can look at your place, considering a landscape project on your own, in the same fashion. You know, I got to be really transparent here, like I always am on the channel. Although I really like the college experience, I got a heck of a lot more education, especially in landscape designing, on the job. Now, I'm not trying to diss anybody that's gone to college and achieved degrees and everything else. It's really worth it. You know, on paper, it's worth it. But the minutia that you get from an on-the-job training thing where you're actually hands-on, and I don't know, sometimes I think that just has a little more value to it. Getting that state certification and taking tests and doing designs and have them scrutinized by so-called experts at the state level, it gave me a chance to go out there and really apply all my training to designing yards in the East Bay area of Northern California back in the day. So here's some of the things that I was taught and that I want to pass on to you. And pay attention to this because it's important. This is the stuff I want you to look at your landscape, considering your project from a designer's point of view. Are you ready? I'm going to go through them, not particularly in any order. I'm just going to number them off and we'll get through them. Number one was scale. And very important concept, and sometimes it's hard for people to get their heads around. But scale is taking a large backyard and reducing it down to a piece of paper so that that back fence and the back side of your house and your fence line down the sides, it's measured out at 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, maybe if you have a really small yard, 3/8 inch scale. And when you deal with an engineer's rule, it becomes really kind of clear as what I'm talking about. And this is all covered very much in detail in my ebook and the digital course. Check it out if you get a chance. So scale was one of them. Number two is placement. And when I speak to placement, I'm talking about placement of not only plants, hardscape, mechanical things like timers, lighting, even plant material, especially when it comes to trees, hardscape when it comes to fencing. It all depends on what your situation is and the functionality behind that placement. So remember that. Plant selection. You know, I can remember taking the test, and the proctor was going over my design, and he was looking at my plants and my placement and where north was and where I had valve assemblies and all the things that went with the design. And he said, your placement is pretty good. And up until that point, I had never heard that particular phrase. But now, over the decades, I really do understand it. You know, placement is very important. You don't want to put a storage shed at the back door of your slider where you want to go out and have an outdoor living area. The placement just wouldn't be right. And at the same token, you don't want to put your valve assemblies for your irrigation system way at the back corner of the back fence back there. So consider placement of various elements in your landscape design. Number 3, something that's really, it's very, very simple, but people miss it when they do sketches, and that is which way is north. Placing your design to scale on a piece of paper is really good, but somewhere on that design, that piece of paper, you got to point to which way is north so everybody can go, okay, that side, that's the backyard is on the southwest side. Then when they start looking at your plant selections and other things, and you're somewhere in Southern California or you're in Florida, and on the southwest side, you've put a bunch of hydrangeas out in the hot, hot summer sun, not good placement. So think about it. Remember which direction is north, your compass direction, very important. Number 5 is balance. When you try to lay out a landscape, a front yard, a backyard, or the whole damn thing, you want to have some kind of visual balance, and that can be attained just on a one-dimensional, or if you get really fancy on a computer, a 3-dimensional drawing. And you don't want to load up one side of the yard with all the trees and big bushes and everything, and then you have nothing on the other side. Or you have all the lighting over on one side and nothing over on this side. You have walkways that go to nowhere, and you can look at the size of patios and walkways, and it just doesn't look balanced. It doesn't have a flow to it. Something to consider when you're dealing with that kind of stuff. I know I'm going through them kind of quick, but this is for all you critics out there. Too long, get to the point, and some of the other things I've heard. So I'm kind of going through them quickly, but I'm trying to thoroughly cover each one. Irrigation placement. And when I say that, it's irrigation placement for the beds, your planting beds, and irrigation placement where your valve manifold and assembly is going to go. Strongly urge you to place that manifold in a very easily accessible place right next to walkways or foundations, whatever you can do, where you can walk out of your slider and your valve assembly is right there. If you have to turn it on manually, you can do so. It's right there where you can see it, and you can look at it and turn on each one and understand which one is which, and you can test them throughout the seasons, and it's very easily accessible. Same thing with lighting mechanicals too. Where is your transformer? Where did you place your lights, etc. Number seven is drainage. If you can, if it's within the budget, strongly urge you to have water management on your site. Allow water to come off your dwelling, allow water to collect in your landscape, but have it manageable so that it does not flood and it can actually evacuate excess water. Have a safe evacuation point for that excess water. You know, drainage is one of the top 3 things I always suggest in a good, well thought out landscape. And it's also one of the most damaging things you can have to a dwelling. You know, flooding is a big issue. So drainage is very, very important. And I strongly suggest that you have gutters, downspouts, and underground drainage system to manage that excess water. Okay, number 8. Number 8 is neatness. Neatness is one of the things that You can have all the rough drafts you want. It's not a big deal. Rough draft the hell out of yourself. It's only pencil and paper at that point. But your final one should be neat enough where you can finish it, copy it, and hand it off to another professional, and they can look at it and go, okay, I understand what this is. It's legible. It makes sense. You have your direction. You have where your valves are going to go. You have where your transformer is going to go. And everything is well written and well printed and well thought out. Lastly is labeling and legend, which kind of goes along with the last one, neatness. You know, anybody who has a good, well thought out design is going to have a legend where all of the plant material with all the numbers, the sizes, and the varieties are up in the corner or on a separate piece of paper. How you decide to legend your design is totally up to you. I mean, I can remember when I first started out, it used to be up in the right-hand corner and the design was down here. Then I got into just numerals, and I'd have a separate piece of paper and the numerals corresponded to a separate legend on another piece of paper. As long as it makes sense, that's the main thing. So labeling where your valves are, labeling where your lighting transformers are, labeling where your patio, your walkways, the widths of your patios and walkways. All of these things are very important because if you're doing it yourself with a little bit of professional help, it's going to go a long ways to have somebody give you an accurate estimate. Say for instance, Mr. Smith is drawing up a really good design. It makes sense to everybody. Mr. Smith is going to have everything done under his own steam with the exception of the walkways and patios. He doesn't feel comfortable, so he's going to hire that out to a pro. Well, the pro comes in and he hands them the design, and then the concrete guy goes, "What's this?" "Well, that's my design. That's what I want you to do." "Oh, well, how wide are your walkways?" "Well, I don't know, like 3.5 feet, 4 feet." "How big is your patio?" "I don't know, whatever I put on there." So labeling, scale, all of these things come into play. Very important aspect. Finally, when you're doing your design, have you followed a particular theme? You know, over the decades of doing this stuff, you have different themes of landscape. You have the Italian Tuscan theme with Italian cypress and lavenders and rosemaries and all the other things that go with an Italian Tuscan theme. Then you have like Oriental or Japanese type with sands and rock and boulders and color and mosses, and you see where I'm going with this. So if you pick a theme, kind of stick with it. Most of the time, at least in the United States. Now, in some parts of the world that I'm not familiar with, a theme may come off very, very differently. But here we have your standard foundation, grass, patio, and a couple of trees theme. It's the all Americana type. It doesn't really have a theme. It has a function. And maybe your theme will just be easy functionality without all the feng shui and everything that goes with it. So now, over 40 plus years of putting pencil to paper, and recently, like the last decade, you know, computer stuff. But I got to tell you, I really got to be honest with you. I think the computer sped things up a little bit for me, but it almost extracted some of the creativity away. And that's just because of the generation I was trained in. You know, it was always about the artistic flow and everything, and you're doing doodle 1 and then doodle 2, and then you combine a couple and you end up with a finished product. And that doodling, that preemptory creativity that started to go into it, got that left brain side of me going, like many other designers, and then the idea catches, and you extrapolate from, you know, sketch number 1 and sketch number 2 and sketch number 3, and you bring it together based on what the client's needs are, and you come together with a design. So let's do a hypothetical that I want you to see through my eyes your landscape. And we're going to do a mock-up consultation call here. I've had a call from you, and you said, hey coach, I'm going to be doing my backyard. I want to redo my backyard, and I want to do it myself. And I'd like you to come over and help me design it. Okay, tell me about your project. Well, you know, we bought this house a couple years ago, and it's got a rundown yard. It was really pet destroyed, and sprinklers are broken, and you know, we have a budget. We have a budget, and it's not a big one, but it's one that I think I can pull this off on in a DIY fashion. Okay, schedule it up. So, what does Coach, as the professional designer, start doing from the get-go? Well, first of all, there's the phone call. Many times I have not even got out of the front door because of what people's expectations are. And I didn't respond to a lot of tire kickers in the end. They couldn't even tell me about their project. So, if I got in the car or the truck and I'm coming to your house, the very first thing I've already asked, is this a front yard or a backyard project? If it's a front yard project, okay. When I'm driving to your house, the first thing I'm looking at is the final 2 blocks of driving in your neighborhood, plus or minus. Because I want to see what the neighborhood looks like. Is it really outdated? You know, does it have a lot of rundown houses, like a bunch of yard cars and trashed out front yard, dead lawns, dead tree, whatever? I'm starting to form an impression, not necessarily a bona fide impression, but I'm trying to say, okay, these people are going to throw X number of dollars, and I still don't even know what your budget is, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. Is if this is a front yard project, that's where your aesthetic value is really going to come into play. You know, we are going to create a curb appeal for maybe a sales appeal down the road. And with that comes, how many dollars are we going to throw at this thing? What amount of fanciness are these people going to want to do compared to the entire neighborhood? Does it make sense to throw $25,000 into this front yard based on the neighborhood? Or would it be easier to throw 8 and make it the nicest one of the neighborhood, but not so fancy that it just stands out like a sore thumb? And you're never going to recover some of that investment. The next thing I'm going to do is, as I pull up to the curb, it's going to be a visual assessment of what I see of the property. What condition is the property in? What condition are walkways, plant material, sidewalks if there are any, driveway, house, paint condition? And then I start making a mental note. Compared the first conversation to the neighborhood I drove into to now the house that I'm up. Has everything that's been told to me congruent so far? Tells me something about the type of people that are living there and the potential client that I'm going to be speaking with. So I get out of the car, walk up to the house, rap. Hey, it's Coach. It's Coach, and I'm here for your landscape design consultation. Hey, thanks for coming in. Come on in. All the time it ended up at the kitchen or the dining room table. And I usually had a spiel that I did. Thanks for having me over. Tell me more about your project. And Coach at that point would shut up. Maybe just a question here or a question there. But basically it was all about listening. And how does this apply to you? Have somebody over. Have somebody who you respect and who has some creativity of their own over and say, you know, Sally, I'm glad you came over. The reason I called you over is because I'm going to be doing a landscape project. I love what you and John did to your place. It was so fantastic. Can you give me some advice, and what would you do to our yard if it was yours? And then shut up and let Sally tell you what she thinks. Plain and simple. So now you've become Coach for just a second as you've reached outside your little fiefdom and got in some outside influence, outside opinions. Be very open-minded. Some things that you're going to hear you may not like, but that's okay, because maybe you haven't seen what they're seeing. Sometimes when we live within the forest, we don't always see the trees. Am I right? Okay, so maybe 15, 20 minutes or so at the table. Then it's time for the walk around. The walk around it's a backyard job, so we go outside and I ask for the tour. Coach starts to ask some questions. How long you been here? What brought you here? Have you done anything since you've been here? What's your first and highest priority in this project? What do you need and what's most important to you? All the feeling out. And generally that lasted about 20, 30 minutes, depending on the size of the project. Now, with that in mind, that's when Coach started to talk turkey, started to do business. And we would talk about consultation prices, design prices, etc. And oftentimes I did get hired. Now, you guys are going to be your own designer. How are you going to go out in that yard? How are you going to do your walk around? How are you going to prioritize what is the most important thing? And then how are you going to take those priorities, turn it into a design and put it on a piece of paper? That's what you're capable of doing. That's how you go about it. This is covered so deeply in the ebook and the Homescape 1.0. The very first thing I suggest is the old plot plan. The plot plan is a to-scale drawing of the project area. The back fence, side fence, back of house or front of house, driveway, wherever it's at. And with that, you stop and you go make yourself 6 copies. When you get done with 6 copies, it's time to do the 3 doodles. Just do some doodles. On your plot plan sketch, you are going to leave in all elements that are going to remain. Anything that's going to be removed will not be on your plot plan. Then start in. Start in with what's staying and then doodle some sketches. Just doodle them out. Go through 2 or 3. Use your time up a little bit and get creative. Look at some images on Google. Do some Pinterest search, whatever. See some things that you might like. Now, after you get those done, you're going to boil it down to a final design. And that final design is going to incorporate everything we've talked about here today. Outside opinions, plot plan, scale, direction, plant selection, placement of certain elements. And once you're done with it, you have something that you can work with and you can actually execute it. Finally, in the design phase, there's one preemptory thing that you have to consider above all else. That is, we always design to a budget. We do not do the opposite. We do not draw out a $75,000 landscape idea knowing full well that you only have $8,000 to $10,000 to throw at it. And what would be the possible exception of that rule? The possible exception of it would be, this is going to be our first phase of that $75,000 design. First phase is all demolition and then put in some hardscape and maybe some valve manifolds and some underground work, and then that's all we got for now. Next year we'll start something else. In the book I cover that, and I also cover some pitfalls of phasing a landscape in. Check it out if you get a chance. With your finished design, you can do a couple of things. If you suddenly realize that this is out of the scope and above your skill set, you can take your little design and have a contractor from ABC Landscape come in and go, I've made this design, it's to scale. These are the plant materials that I want. This is the hardscape I want. Can you please give me an estimate? You can also take that design to your local nursery professional and say, this is my landscape project. Can you please verify for me that maybe my plant selection is good, my directions versus plant placement are okay, and can you show me some of these out here so I can get an idea of how much they cost? That's what your design can do. It's really a great utilitarian tool to go from zero to landscape hero, just on a piece of paper. That final design that you have should be able to stand on its own. It should have all the elements that are necessary for anybody, including yourself, to be able to understand and say, yep, I can see what's going to happen here. This is easy to understand. It's neat, it's to scale. You can see the placement, you can see the direction, you can see all those elements. Here's a couple of things that I would like you to consider when you put in your landscape design. Some things that I often put in mine that many people never considered till I actually mentioned it. So consider it in yours if you're getting to that point soon. They're very self-explanatory, so I'll go through them kind of quickly. Number one, a durable surface that surrounds your whole outdoor area of your landscape, sides, back, and front. Generally, at a minimum, cement, paver block walkways, all the way around. I used to say this to my clients: a durable surface pathway that walks all the way around your entire landscape is one of the most functional things in your landscape. You can roll things, you can push things, you can walk carefully without fear in your bare feet at night, not worrying about going on wet grass, into mud, or on gravel. And you can walk it all the way around barefoot and come right back in the same door. Consider that. Irrigation manifolds, as I spec'd earlier, at a very convenient location. Wired up to a timer, which is also in a convenient location, whether it be indoors or outdoors. Planting beds. Planting beds are balanced. And when I say balanced, an old landscape school rule is the planting bed is at least half as deep or half as wide as the wall is tall. So a quick for instance is if you have an 8-foot wall, your bed should be about 4 feet minimum. In this day and age, the 2-foot bed with a few geraniums in them back in the day when your grandparents or your parents had them, those days are gone. Have some balance and some depth to it. Have wandering beds that'll really soften the effect of those rectilinear building right angles that are always there. That will set you apart from 90% of the neighbors. Aesthetic appeals. Your aesthetic appeals should always be in the front yard because curb appeal equals sales appeal. The backyard is always functionality mixed with creativity. Functionality mixed with creativity so that you have something that looks nice, is functional for the whole family, and everybody spends most of their time in the backyard. But that front yard is always the most important to keep your value of your home up and also the neighborhood as well. Don't forget about separate walkways up to the front door. Not just the driveway, a separate 4-foot walkway that comes up through the landscape with landscape on both sides of that walkway that leads up to the main walkway to your front door. Have visitors. Maybe you have a birthday party one Saturday for your little one and you've got 6 or 8 cars coming over. It's nice for everybody not to have to walk up between the full driveway of 2 other cars. You have a separate nice walkway that comes up to your front door. Lighting. Everybody thinks lighting is really a luxury item, and I guess it can be. But as far as ambiance, aesthetic value, and security is very, very important in this day and age for our dwellings and our homes. Am I right? So, coupled with proper placement of lighting and proper placement of plant material, remote cameras that, ring doorbells and Eve cameras and stuff, it's very nice to have a landscape that's lit up so people cannot lurk and creep around behind, next to your windows, behind covered huge plant materials that we used to always see back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Keep your landscape lower, your lighting higher, and you'll have far less creepers, skulking around your yard, I guarantee it. When you think you need a 3-foot walkway, go 4 foot, go 4.5 feet, and make sure your gates on either side going to your backyard are the same width. It's so much easier navigating walkways like that with little ones on tricycles, wheelbarrows, heavy-duty items, construction people coming and going. they can get their equipment through. You can get your brand new big old LG refrigerator through the side gate, when in the past a 36-inch or a 42-inch gate. It doesn't work no more. So think a little bit wider. Think about the ability to walk down a walkway shoulder to shoulder with somebody and not be stepping off the side of the sidewalk. 4-foot walkways. And then patio areas should be commensurate with the number of people that are going to be entertained. Can't have a little dinky patio when you have a 20-person birthday party. Lastly, always keep in mind the purpose of what you're going to design. What are your guys' needs above all else? Some people, all they need is grass, fence line to fence line, with a small patio, and they can call it good. Most of us need various purposes in the landscape. Areas of purpose, maybe private areas, like I covered in the vignettes type of episode that I'll put it right up here. Play areas, pet areas, storage area, etc. Think about the purposes and where they're going to go. Does your landscape area be able to accommodate all the needs that you have? Or do you have to shrink some things down or even eliminate an idea or two? Guys, that's what I have for you this week. I think that's a pretty good insight into a landscape designer's eye and what we look at. Now you take that same eye and you go look at your landscape through that colored glass. Bring in some outside opinions. Do up a couple of doodles and have fun doing it. If you have any questions or you get stuck, I'm an email away. Plain and simple. Always be glad to answer them personally. Don't forget to check out the website. Check out that ebook if you get a chance, and if you really want to dive into this stuff deep, Homescape 1.0 is there and waiting for you. I'll catch you guys next week. As always, to your landscape success, thanks for staying with me. And my last question for you is, start throwing some comments as far as some of the things you'd like to hear about. What are some of the problems? What are some of the trends? Whatever you want to hear, I'd love to hear from you. Guys, you take care. Thanks for staying with me. I'll see you next week.